Namaste and welcome to this podcast where today we have a very interesting session with Mr. Rishi Dhariwal. So, sir is my senior from IIM Ahmedabad's PGPX program and a fantastic human being. I have known him now for more than a decade, and as we'll come to know in this podcast, he has very diverse perspectives on all matters under the sun. Someone who started with sales for Ashok Leyland, moved to banking, then went to PGPX at IIM Ahmedabad, was one of the founding pillars of AU Small Finance Bank, and now has transitioned into a much more interesting role because I actually somehow, no matter how big and glamorous corporate jobs are, something doing something on your own is something where the true test is also there. So he's now started on something on his own. So, welcome to the show, sir. And I will fire a lot of questions just to gain an insights about your journey because it has been so fascinating. We met in DVR sir's classes once.
Yes. Hi, Anurag. Thank you. And Jai Shri Krishna, everyone. Yes, it is my pleasure to be on your podcast today. Look forward to a very enriching conversation.
Yes, sir. So, rural Rajasthan, 1992, you have been a mechanical engineer
Yes.
and you were selling Ashok Leyland trucks.
Yes.
So, Ashok Leyland had never sold any vehicle for decades in rural Rajasthan, those select districts where you were appointed. So how was that journey? So I think I really find that very fascinating. So takes me back, what, 35 years when I was in class one or two. Please tell us about
Okay.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was a very interesting situation, right? Because I think early 80s, Ashok Leyland had sold a few vehicles which were financed by nationalized vehicles in North India. And those had actually failed because there was no after sales network and spare parts support network for Ashok Leyland vehicles in North India back then. Now, those vehicles were parked in various, not even parked, they were abandoned in various truck unions across North India, which were like, a testimony to the poor product acceptance in northern part of the country. And the result was that when we used to go and meet customers, they used to say कि that मैं बूढ़ा आदमी हूँ, मैं इस उम्र में अगर अशोक लेलैंड की गाड़ी खरीदूंगा तो लोग सोचेंगे कि मैं सठिया गया हूँ. When you meet a younger customer, he would say कि सर मेरे छोटे छोटे बच्चे, मैं अगर अशोक लेलैंड की गाड़ी खरीदूंगा तो मैं बर्बाद हो जाऊँ. तो फिर बेचोगे किसको? Old people don't want to buy, young guy doesn't want to buy. And then, people used to say, and while I'm not endorsing any brands here, but people used to tell us, घी खाओ देसी, ट्रैक्टर रखो मेसी, जूता पहनो बाटा, गाड़ी रखो टाटा. So it was that tough to sell Ashok Leyland vehicles back then. But I think many things that I learned in my career, I learned in my first job. So definitely, and some of them have got translated to my son also. So I definitely owe a lot to Ashok Leyland in terms of whatever I learned in my first job with them.
Fantastic.
Bata,
And tractor Messi.
घी खाओ देसी, ट्रैक्टर रखो मेसी. That is Tafe.
Fantastic. Okay, okay. Now 1997, fast forward 5 years, you started your own business in vehicle loans with brief period
Yes.
of 8 months, direct marketing
Yeah.
business. And then you shut
Yes.
it down only within 8 months. So, what were your
Yes.
learnings from that limited span? And then you joined City and never looked back. So, if you could shed light on that.
See, that business never got shut down. So I had a partner who's continued to run that business and thrive in that business till today. I personally feel that leaving that business was probably the biggest mistake that I did in my career. So it was a very good business in 8 months. There are 240 days, and I think we did 132 vehicle loans in 8 month period, which was fantastic. And we were making good money. That kind of money in a job I made only after 4 years in city, right? So It was definitely a very well paying business. The learning that I had in leaving that business was that in life, a lot of things get resolved through a conversation. Often we are like, we make assumptions and take decisions based on our own perceptions, and we do not talk to the other person about our thoughts and feelings, which is where, I took that decision and I left that business, whereas I had actually started that business. So that was it. I think as a Marwadi, that itch to build your own business is always there. So, which is what maybe we will talk later during this
Yeah.
conversation.
So then founding employee of City's commercial vehicle business in India. So again as a
Yes.
startup, but again as an employee, as an entrepreneur. So how was that?
Yeah, see, I was the 11th employee of uh, the commercial vehicle financing business, which was, under the sort of umbrella of emerging local corporate business of Citibank globally. And I think the learnings that Citi gave me, have, structured my career and my thinking uh, for my entire life so far. So, because Citi brought in its technology of lending, right? And technology of lending means how do you identify a target market attractiveness, and then which segment of customers you want to cater to. Sorry. What kind of credit program therefore you write, what are the customer selection parameters, and then what are the risk acceptance parameters, and how do you approach customers, how do you build relationship with customers. And I think the aggression that Citi has towards acquiring customers as well as servicing them, I think those are the things that you learn in Citi. And see, the truth is that Citi was the first bank in the country to start lending to transporters and construction equipment segment customers. So everything that our private sector banks have done subsequently, people have learned from Citi's approach to lending to transporters. Like I said, what happened with the nationalized banks lending to Ashok Leyland vehicles in early 80s. That way, you know, transporters were part of a negative list for banks.
Mm,
And Citi actually started catering to that segment. So, and we were not only giving loans, we were offering working capital facilities as well as, the non-fund based facilities, the bank guarantees and LCs to customers in the transportation and construction equipment segment. I believe that at that point of time, we used to think, or at least we knew that at least 70% of all the large transporters of our country had facilities with Citibank. That was
mm.
the level of business that we managed to build. Those learnings have continued with me. So, City of 1990s were a very, very innovative organization. Of course, that city is no more there.
Tell me something, these transporters, they have a lot of this kacha pakka, their incomes are not documented. You can learn about their income only from the channel, the circles. And
Correct.
City being as MNC systems, processes. So how do you actually document that income of that person in the city system?
So the beauty of the way the approach, the credit program approach that City had was that, for a particular type of vehicle in a particular application, you know that what are the earnings on a particular route, right? And a transporter has got his own contracts, so you know what is the kind of fare freight that he's getting under that, and whatever is the market freight rate, right? So instead of looking at the balance sheet data of the customer, where in any case back then was the first time when the government brought in tax of 1500 rupees per truck for transporters or
Presumptive
something like that,
taxation.
right? So
Presumptive
there was
taxation.
no way that there was any requirement to even expect them to keep records of their turnover, etc. But using this kind of surrogates, we would say that this is the income of the customer, these are the This is the total fleet. This is the free vehicles, whatever he hires from the market. Citi actually built, the way surrogate lending gets done in these unorganized segments of the country. And transportation was, I think, the first segment which Citi addressed in this manner. So that is what,
Fantastic.
we built back in the
That's called
90s.
Section 44A E, where now you have to pay just 7,500 rupees per month per truck, no questions asked. You don't have to
Yeah,
maintain books of accounts, and you might be earning maybe a lakh rupees per month from that truck. The government is not bothered.
correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
now 2009, someone in the 40s, 17 years into banking, you went to IIM Ahmedabad for an MBA, the 1 year PGPX. At
Yes.
that age, you would have had kids who would be now going into school, maybe senior section. Then what really
Yes.
prompted a successful banker to enter the classrooms of IIM Ahmedabad?
So two things, right? One was that I was an engineer, and I always saw that, MBAs got more opportunities than I got. And I used to wonder कि यार इनको ऐसा क्या आता है जो मुझे नहीं आता है. And that was something which was definitely one reason. And then I had a boss, Rohit Ranjan. He recently retired from Axis Bank. He actually told me one day, and I still remember it, and I took that advice. So he really inspired me and motivated me to attempt the MBA. And luckily, I got admitted in IMA. So that's how I decided to do the MBA.
And tell me
And
honestly, does it make an
yeah,
ROI? Because your
it,
salary, the salary cost, the cost of the MBA, did it really pay off? And I'm asking this because a lot of people will be looking forward to people like you to give them real insights that is it really
yes,
worth taking that pause, taking that plunge, paying so much money? ROI ज़्यादा आगे बढ़े क्या? As someone told you, धारीवाल बहुत आगे जाएगा.
doing an MBA transformed my life. The short answer is doing an MBA transformed my life
Wow,
in terms of
fantastic.
career growth, in terms of opportunities that I got, and in terms of, the ROI. So the payback is tremendous. But while doing the MBA, and 2009 was a bad year to get into MBA, passing out in 2010 was equally bad. I knew it was difficult for me to get a job, right, immediately on passing out, but I was lucky to figure out something. My During the MBA itself, I was clear that I've come here to learn. So let me just focus on learning everything that I can get from this, honestly, temple and learn from it. So, and that sort of paid off in multiple ways because one, your graduation education is a vertical specialization. I was a mechanical engineer, so I knew about mechanical engineering. And MBA is a horizontal learning. So you learn about multiple subjects, and that equips you to really understand an overall business in a much different way than your engineering education alone. So that answers that question that I always had in my mind: what does an MBA know, which an engineer doesn't know? So there is a difference, right? Second, you become part of a network which is your class cohort as well as the overall larger PGPX network as well as the PGP network. And third is, I think, the halo effect. So maybe you are still the same person, but one, the way you think of yourself changes, and maybe the way people perceive you also changes. And ultimately, life is 85% perception, right? So it pays off that way.
Yeah,
I'm
very well
sure
said.
you
I
had
think,
the
yeah.
same experience
Yeah,
too, right?
similar, yes. The
Yeah.
halo effect actually really plays out. You are saying the same thing, but the other person takes you more seriously because
Yes.
he's bound. Somehow he feels morally obliged that he has to listen to some IIM Ahmedabad fellow telling that thing.
So
It is
true.
the same thing. So, sir, 2013, okay, now from like an umbrella like Citibank to join AU at a relatively nascent stage. So, again, a
Yeah.
startup in its own right. So, I mean,
Yeah.
it would be your Ashok Leyland sales as startup number one, your vehicle loans as startup number two, city's commercial vehicle as startup number three, and this becomes your startup number four. So now tell us
Yes.
about this whole experience as AU.
See, honestly, for me, that decision was not very difficult. Uh, because a lot of people, I have taken a long time to hire a lot of people in AU, a lot of effort required. For me, that was not a difficult decision because I met Sanjay in 1995. And when he was a DSA of SRF Finance, right? I was the first person in commercial vehicle financing that he met. So, excuse me. So, and then I had lent to his transport business also back in 1999 when he did a transportation business. And that sort of, so I had that comfort about the promoter, right? And when I decided to move to AU, it was in 2013. AU was already at 3,000 crores of AUM. And I felt with all the investors who had put money in AU already that this is an organization which is going to take off. On the other side, because I was in city at whatever role I was in, I knew that, the commercial vehicle business was only a regulatory obligation business for city. They will never be very serious about it and they will definitely not invest in it. So there is a 4 by 4, a 2 by 2 metric, which I say, one should use for your decisioning about which organization you should work in. And that is that, your organization has to do well and the business you are in within that organization has to do well. Your performance in any case is a minimum requirement, right? If your performance is good, your business is doing well, and the bank is doing well, then only you can thrive in your career. If the bank is having a challenge and your business is having a challenge, then even if you're doing your best, you cannot thrive. Now, City had its own challenges, and I knew that the business I was in was not destined to grow. So there was definitely a reason to leave it. And there were not too many exciting opportunities which I saw in the market. And, you know, 11 years in AU, I have seen the company grow 50 times. I have joined when it was 3,000. When I left, it was 150,000 crores of AUM. Balance sheet was obviously much bigger because the liability side got added. And honestly, I joined when, even the draft guidelines for small finance bank were not there. So I pretty much joined the NBFC. But I felt that as this company grows, if I join it now, as the company grows, my career will also grow. That was the fundamental reason why I took that chance, right? And that has been a good decision. And honestly, I think I would add that your career and investing are similar. If you invest in large caps, your returns will be guaranteed, but they will be slow. You invest in a micro cap or a small cap, and you can ride the growth of that small cap to a large cap. That is how one should look at careers and choose the companies in which people should think of working.
That's a fantastic framework, exactly. But yes, you have, it also depends on your risk appetite. The chances of failure in joining a large cap is relatively lower, but you might end up making a wrong decision when it comes to choice of a micro cap.
Yeah, so you can start at small cap, right? And you also should go by the decision that the investors have taken. I would say that if IFC decided to put their money and Warburg Pincus decided to put their money, then please trust their judgment to, ride on that for your career is one way to look at some of these decisions.
Okay. Now, fast forward, you got that universal bank license and did a lot of work worth kudos at AU. Coming to your fifth startup now in your life, which is your current avatar. where you are going
Yeah.
to launch a book in the print form this week. It's already there out in Kindle on the Bhagavad
Yes.
Gita, interpreting it as you claim for the first time in a more non-conventional fashions. Ever since we've all been interpreting it the way we've been told ki Lord Krishna has said this. So tell us
Yes.
more about this. I'm very curious to know, and in fact, I have got a chance to read your book very quickly, but I'll go through it more. So what exactly is this book and what is the different take? Because we've got Bhagavad Gita interpretations dime a dozen. From an ISKCON to so many Gita press. So what's difference in yours?
Yeah, so I'll tell you, a backstory about why I got interested in writing this book. So in the 1980s, there was this book called The Bermuda Triangle by Charles Berlitz, which actually spoke about, the Mercury cylinder engine in a Pushpak Vimana, and when Ram and Sita start from Lanka to come to Ayodhya, they see the stars, it suddenly turns dark and they see the stars. Now, those descriptions of Ramayana is not what I have learned in my school, right? We don't come across those descriptions from Ramayana in our whatever katha that we hear, right? So that set the curiosity in my mind that I should learn or read our scriptures directly from Sanskrit. What exactly is written there? And same way, when I decided that I should learn Bhagavad Gita, maybe 15 years back is when I thought about it. Because people say that, Hindus don't know their religion. So I said, okay, we should at least read Bhagavad Gita. And part of that inspiration came from reading Autobiography of a Yogi, which is Paramahansa Yogananda's autobiography, where he refers to Bhagavad Gita so often. And so that inspiration was there. But when you start reading it from all the traditional translations, you realize that, you know, some of the things are not in line with our perception or the way we have seen our culture and our religion. So you feel very uncomfortable. So I have 8 different Bhagavad Gitas, now ninth, which is what I have written by different authors, trying to figure out the meaning in various shlokas, and I was never satisfied. And therefore, I said I should learn it directly from Sanskrit. Learning Sanskrit is a challenge, but ChatGPT helps you to solve it. So, and the first shloka in Bhagavad Gita is actually by Dhritarashtra. Now, all along, we carry an image that Dhritarashtra was a blind guy. Lady Justice is also blind. What if Dhritarashtra's blindness is actually supposed to indicate impartiality on his part? And that thought remained in me for a long time. And I said, let me reinterpret with the mindset that Dhritarashtra was actually impartial. Duryodhan's real name was Suyodhan. No parent would keep their child's name as Duryodhan. So the moment you read Duryodhan as Suyodhan, and then the third was, which is the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Arjun Vishad Yoga, where, you know, we have traditionally learned that Arjun got emotional in the battlefield and he dropped his weapons. That is this context in which Bhagavad Gita is said. Now, please appreciate that Arjun was a highly trained and educated, accomplished warrior. Very difficult for me to even accept that he would throw away his weapons at that stage of a war. Now, so therefore, if you make that first change, Dhritarashtra is not blind, he is impartial. Duryodhan is actually Suyodhan. And then Arjuna is not emotional. And with that lens, when you start reinterpreting Bhagavad Gita, then it starts revealing many leadership principles to us which are so relevant in today's organizational context. The other motivation that I had was that leadership theories actually abound. So, you will have somebody give one theory, then another theory, and for a CEO, it is simply impossible to keep up with all the frameworks which keep coming. And I said, what if I were to say that Krishna is actually an active participant in the war, right? So if you actually, who is Krishna? Krishna is the CEO of the universe. If you wear an organizational hat, and
with a
if you
lot of
think
dilemmas,
that, sorry.
with a lot of dilemmas, moral dilemmas, ethical dilemmas.
Yeah, so Krishna is actually, if the venues, in reality, when we say Krishna is Bhagwan, and Bhagwan is who? He is the, when we say that, he runs the universe, right? So then he is the CEO of the universe.
Yes.
Now, the words that the CEO of the universe would say cannot be anything which is, sort of petty. Is actually an active participant in the war, right? So if you actually, who is Krishna? Krishna is the CEO of the universe. If you wear an organizational hat, and
With a
if you
lot of
think
dilemmas,
that, sorry.
with a lot of dilemmas, moral dilemmas, ethical dilemmas.
Yeah, so Krishna is actually, if the venues, in reality, when we say Krishna is Bhagwan, and Bhagwan is who? He is the, when we say that, he runs the universe, right? So then he is the CEO of the universe.
Yes.
Now, the words that the CEO of the universe would say cannot be anything which is, sort of petty. Words that Arjuna would say would not be anything which is petty, right? So and you have to therefore, try to raise your thinking to the level of God instead of bringing the words of level God to the level of humans.
Mm.
And that is where I have tried to make an attempt. Of course, you know, my interpretations are based on what we call as, time, place, and circumstances, desh, kal, or paristiti. Based on my time, place, and circumstances, I have done this reinterpretation of the first two chapters. I'm sure that when people start looking at it from this lens, we will find more people challenge the interpretations and come with many more new learnings and interpretations from Bhagavad Gita. That is the attempt that I have done over here.
Yeah, so Amish Tripathi from IIM Calcutta also has similar books on the Indian religion, and he has also interpreted it in varied ways. And I think
Yes,
your perspective will also challenge us to understand our religion and our beliefs more logically. I mean, when there are
yes,
two, three contradictions, and then you
yes,
logically try to defeat the ones which are out, then your conviction in the one philosophy which you still stand by is even stronger. So it's good that, because I also often hear that, it's not Duryodhan, it is Suryodhan. Your parent
yes,
cannot name you as Duryodhan. It is only history which has, we've been taught as if
correct,
he was always named as Duryodhan itself, which cannot be, because you cannot have a
correct,
negative name.
correct.
So it will be interesting what this book reads out, and I think it's going to come out in more short clips of yours and more discussions on social media. The
Yeah,
another dimension that you're now having is as an independent director on banks and NBFCs. And I think with the kind of experience that you have, which will be like 25, 35 odd years, you'd be adding a lot of value. But do you really think that independent directors today add any significant value to boardroom discussion? Are they titular positions where people just try to collect some very big brands on their boards to show that yes, there is a governance, but it is the promoter actually who will continue to take the calls? How risky is it to be an independent director at an organization because of the way SEBI has now held independent directors responsible? So how risky or how happiness filled is this job?
yeah. So, see, I think it's like with any job, you have to make yourself useful and valuable to the organization, right? Just because you are on the board and you have a title does not give you an authority, right? I believe that all roles are of responsibility. And from that perspective, when you bring your experience and the way you communicate, see, when we are executives in an organization, then our word travels. As an independent director, your advice has to be in a manner that is acceptable to the management and relevant to the scale and size of the organization. So if you can't, if I mean, it is my responsibility to bring my experience to bear and become useful for the organization that I get associated with. If I believe that, I have the power of my experience to give gyan, then that's not going to fly. You have to make your experience relevant
Sound
and help the organization to grow, which is why people would hire people like me to be on their board and be their advisor, right? So, from that point of view, it's been only 1 quarter or so that I have ventured into this, but I definitely feel that people like me have a responsibility to give back to the industry where we can share our experience and expertise, help people to scale by avoiding many of the challenges that we have faced in our previous organizations and build a very robust culture and organization. I think any role is a partnership role, and an independent director also has to prove his worth and utility to the organization that they get associated with, and definitely one can build a good career here. In terms of your question on SEBI's tightness, I think that is in required because of the way the responsibility that the board actually carries, right? I think the board has that responsibility, and the board has to communicate to the promoters and the management that going this path is what will help them to unlock value. Now, if the independent directors take their roles to be casually, then that is what will pan out. If you take your role to be seriously, then that is the way it will pan out. So, in as much as if some promoters have done wrongdoing, I would say that the board has equal, if not more, responsibility, because honestly, I think the promoters really look forward to good counsel, advice, and experience of the independent directors that they try to get on their boards. And the independent directors really owe it to the management to ensure that the organizations do not fail. See, let's face it, when an organization fails, the promoter also loses. While we can say that, promoter did this or that, the promoter also loses. We should not lose sight of that. And that, I think, is a very important responsibility that the board and the independent directors have to the promoters also.
Okay, fantastic. So I think I love the way that you said that, it is more of a doer role because a lot of people have misconstrued independent director as a titular privilege that they'll be on boards of companies with a lot of perks, a lot of money. But I really loved your definition when you said, you have to actually help the promoter scale his organization, leveraging your experience of decades so that he or she does not make the mistakes that were made earlier. And I think that's
Yes.
a very good, a doer kind of a role. Karm is involved here. Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, sir. So now some very quick questions,
Yeah.
very, very fast. Since you've been a banker, an aspiring banker will look up to you in today's
Yeah.
career. Maybe those skills, those three skills which are essential, and they might be the same as those which were there in 1990s, or they might have transformed. So what are those essential skills that a banker today needs to develop?
I think the most important skill has remained building relationships with your customers. Knowing your customers and building relationships with them has never gone out of date and out of fashion. And I've always told my teams also that if you build relationships with 100 customers in your career, and sooner you do it, the better. And 100 relationships mean that you know everything about the customer, and he relies on you for all his financial transactions. That is a relationship. So if you build 100 relationships with your customers, you will thrive on those 100 relationships in your entire career. Even today, the relationships that I built in Ashok Leyland and SRF Finance and early days in City is what I thrive on. So building relationships is number one. Number two, hard work will never go out of fashion again. And your hard work is the only thing that you control. Nobody can prevent you from doing it. And I would add to that hard work with discipline will take you far. So I think that, you know, the current generation also, you've come to work and build your career. Hard work is the only thing which will remain with you, is what I would tell. And third, you have to keep investing in yourself. You will have to keep learning. I have done that multiple times. I did my MBA, like what we discussed. Then I recently did a course from ISB, which is Chief Digital and Artificial Intelligence Officer. I did my KPMG certification for independent directorship. And I recently did a course from India Authors Academy to write a book. So, learning is something which will always be required, which will actually ensure that you are growing yourself, and don't leave that to your manager or your HR. You have 100% or 200% ownership for your career. Investing in yourself is the most important thing that you will do in your life. So I think these are the three things that do not become irrelevant, whatever happens with technology and whatever happens with anything else.
Sir, we've discussed your successes. Tell us that one failure that still sends shivers down your spine.
I told you, right? Leaving that business was a bad decision. It was not a failure, but in a way, it was a bad decision that I took, which I honestly regret till today.
Uh, what's your vision for the next 10 years now? If you were to jot your business plan, so book writing, board roles, consulting. So how does that really transform into that IIM Ahmedabad alums business plan for the next 10 years? What's your roadmap, your vision?
See, I'm again investing in the next 15 years of my career. So, you know, there will be hopefully 6 books that I will write to completely translate and reinterpret Bhagavad Gita, because the first one has the first 2 chapters, which covers 118 shlokas, and there are 699 or 700 shlokas in Bhagavad Gita. So, if so, that is definitely a authorpreneurship business that I want to build, where I am able to share the learnings, and I hope to offer leadership training based on principles from Bhagavad Gita over the next few months onwards. So that is, one definite roadmap which I have. Another book that I've always wanted to write is a book on retail lending. Despite being such an important and big subject, you will be surprised that there are not enough books on retail lending, especially for countries like India. Honestly, I think there are only a couple of books which are more from, some of the, and which are more from an overall retail lending perspective, not from the lending in the unstructured segment. And that, I think, is a technology which we, people like me, need to share to the larger audience. So I'm sure that a book on retail lending and building retail liabilities, which I have had the great fortune of doing with AU Bank, are things that should follow in 2026. And I hope to develop a coaching platform based on my books over a period of time. That I think is the strategy that I want to take. So I want to be part of the creator economy, right? And I'll give you some background to it. So when I started my career in 1992, software was actually taking off big time and I missed the bus. I should have jumped into software because if the industry grows, your career grows with it, right? And in today's times, digital platform ecosystems, creator economy, and artificial intelligence are the growth engines for the next 10 years. These are businesses which are AI supported, not AI affected. So, if you are going to be living for the next 30 years, you cannot escape this opportunity. And that is what I want to sort of build on.
That's a very futuristic, very good vision. I think they are AI enabled businesses, not AI affected business. It's a very nice
Yes.
way of putting it. Yeah. So my final question, what would be
Yeah.
Rishi Dhariwal's advice to his younger self, the one who started off in 1992 in Jodhpur? If you were to go back the timeline, what would be that one piece of advice that you would give to him?
The most important advice that I would give to myself is build your own business. Building a business is what creates legacy for you. See, when I left my job from AU Small Finance Bank 1 year back, my experience or my network becomes zero if I don't capitalize on my experience, right? So the what you in investing look at as price to book ratio, right? Your book value becomes zero the day you leave your job. Your price to book is based on the experience and the knowledge that you have. Now, when you build your own, and what happens parallelly is that when my son started his job, he had to start from scratch. He had to start from zero because his father was in a job. He doesn't get any benefit of my network experience, knowledge, and skills. If I had built a business, which is what I will build now, then my generations will get a benefit of that business, even if they don't get into the same business. So you look at any industrial house, right? They they get the benefit of compounding over generations. It's not only the business they inherit, they get the benefit of compounding over 100 years. We talk about so much about Warren Buffett's compounding over 60 or 70 or 80 years of his career. Business houses actually get the benefit of compounding across generations. So build a business. If job is not your compulsion, then you should just take that chance on yourself. India is a land of opportunity. You do anything, you are bound to be successful. So that is the advice that I would give to Rishi Dhariwal of 1992.
Fantastic. I mean, it has been such a wonderful journey for you. And as that gets documented in these experiences of yours in the form of the books and the learning sessions that you're going to take, I think it will. And for example, one thing that really struck was that your job, the book value remains only as long as you are there in that job. And the moment you
Yes,
retire, moment that chair goes away, you reduce to zero. And that can be a heart shattering experience for a lot of people. So, in the nick of time, if you really step back, take a pause and start on your own, then you're really building a
yes.
legacy. And that is a very important takeaway for me because I have also kind of taken a pause from
You are a
corporate
chartered
life.
accountant. You should understand this better than anybody.
Yeah, yeah, correct. So when I left my job 4 years ago, started my own, I mean, it was a very heart-shattering kind of a thing because you have that chair where everyone comes and says, sir, 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 and suddenly you are there out in the market to ask for work. But I think that transformative experience now will build a legacy if, let's say, my daughters were to join these firms.
Correct.
I completely agree with you on that point. And thank you so much, sir, for sharing your thoughts. and it was
Thank you.
wonderful to have you.
It has been a pleasure to be on your podcast, and I really thank you for the opportunity and the questions. You have really researched my background very well. Thank you for those questions.
I've known you for a decade now, so I have been an ardent
Yes,
follower of yours. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
thanks.